This is your captain speaking.
Yeah.
We're going to be reaching cruising altitude here in just a couple of minutes.
Settle in.
Just sit back and relax and.
What's on the in-flight? What's the in-flight film today? I wonder.
It's Men Among Ruins.
Oh, that's my favorite to watch on a long flight.
I think, I don't know, you're a very weird person if this is your favorite film.
Yeah, I picture, when I die, and it turns out my mom was right about everything, and I'm on my way to hell. I feel like hell will be an airline that only plays like a B film version of Evola's books.
Well, I mean, you'll meet Evola in hell for sure.
Not if my mom is right. I'm kidding.
I think you will. Because
he was a Catholic, right?
He hates the Catholic Church.
Yeah? Okay, I thought he was like a Catholic and a pagan or some shit like that. I heard some right-winger today say that about him.
He's a pagan and he hates the Catholic Church, yes.
But there are some Catholics who like Evola, and so they'd like him to be more Catholic, no?
Oh, okay. Okay.
I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He would like him to be less Catholic.
I made this picture here just for this episode. Can you tell who it is, what it is?
No.
Any guesses? It's relevant. It's about the last episode that you did on Evola.
Evola is a screaming dog.
Oh, you're so close. It's Evola as a lemur, a.k.a. a Lemurian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ended with Boris, Fritz, and Ray all together once again.
Hey, all together in one place.
All suffering from our own unique maladies. Well, not even unique. Boris and I have the exact same fucking broke-ass tooth problem somehow at like the same time.
Yeah.
That's what we get for playing Hammer Smash Face, the Tenepod backyard game version.
Yeah, for our... free listeners, because this is a free episode, we have been lacking recently in episodes. You may have noticed. Fritz both went to sea.
Yeah. I
and
saw what I saw.
While Fritz was at sea, I was in horrible dental pain.
Yes.
Which apparently Fritz also experienced at some point as well.
I don't think mine was as bad as yours. I lost a very old filling, and I'm just, I'm super terrified of dentists, and that's just what it is.
Well, I did too, but everything got insanely infected. And
oh, God.
It's got, the Hammer Smash Face does come to mind because it reminds me of like... I forget what like death metal song had this intro that was like something like the sounds of drills against bone fills my brain with psychotic ecstasy.
Not me.
This is what I'm thinking about when they're just like.
Oh my God! Oh, you're so good at that sound too. Ooh.
Yes.
Oh, please don't. I have to rub my teeth.
Yeah.
Terrible. And then Ray got fucked up somehow. Walking out in our solar system's laser. Yes. Went outside for like an hour.
Yes. Got a heat stroke, and not even while being at sea.
Right. Yes. All the way fucking inland.
I'm not completely healthy now. And also, I'm now in this stage of reading too much of an asshole and like starting really to deeply hate him phase of research.
So your vacation went super well.
Yes. I mean, it's the way I like to spend those vacations. Sure. It's always some horrible asshole that I'm reading in detail.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I picked up Ringworm walking around barefoot in public places.
Oh, nice.
I got a little fun guy hanging out with me, and it ain't Calhoun Gomez.
But not like the famous metalcore band Ringworm from Cleveland.
Oh man, I wish.
Never mind.
This one. Yeah. Well. Anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of, fungal infections on the body of society.
I mean, all of this, like, we could feasibly compare having root canals and having being drilled, ringworm, heat stroke, to the experience that Ray had reading more Evola.
Yes,
sure,
and also while vomiting and having diarrhea and fever and everything.
There you go. And we're back from vacation.
Did you save pictures for our future Gore Grind album?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Definitely. Fantastic. Well, shit. So Evola, this is a free app. I think the last time we talked about Evola was a good 4 weeks ago, at least. Maybe even, I don't know. Time means nothing now. And
yes.
But I don't know. I went back and I re-listened to that last episode you made, and
I mean, for to somebody like you who was lost at sea, time. Really
no,
doesn't mean
at all.
anything.
Yeah, it's an unbroken horizon between past and present now, just like the sea in the evening. And here's what I was going to say though, Ray. I did listen to that last episode, the Revolt Against the Modern World Part 2.
We did 2 episodes on that, yeah.
That's right. And just to kind of refresh myself, and I'm not sure it worked. It's pretty crazy shit. If I remember, the thrust of it was something like you had these you got this sort of long history of humankind that he's yanking out of his keister, which involves some sort of ancient immortal Hyperboreans who banged some hot Lemurians, basically, producing some miscegenated aberration of what was once the Hyperborean glorious immortal civilization, creating essentially man, possibly Atlanteans, and somehow all this adds up to multiple ages that do not correspond in any way to the ages they sound like, such as Bronze Age, Silver Age.
Yeah, you were very confused about that.
It really did confuse me.
No,
it's connected to nothing at all. Just keep that in mind.
He's using those. It's connected how the ancient Greeks, like Herodotus, I think that he cites use those 3 or 4 terms in the sense of describing mythological past.
That's what I should have said. It refers to nothing that actually happened in reality, in life.
Yes, it refers to ancient literature. Yes.
But when he talks about it, he's not giving a literary synopsis of something. He's using it as the true history of mankind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Clearly.
And all of this adds up to...
Why are you confused, Fritz? This is very clear.
Yeah, I think I got a handle on it now. So all these ages move from these ages of these immortal wonders to this dark age of Kali Yuga that we are currently in, awaiting for a sort of big old reset button, bringing us back to a new golden age, hopefully with all the immortality, but probably not.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, it's a confusing book. I read the whole thing, did 2 episodes on it. Yeah. But that was only the second and third installment in this little series that I'm doing. The first episode we did was on René Guénon's book, The Crisis of the Modern World.
That's right.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to do is somehow go through some of the most important books in this kind of, I don't know how to call it even, I guess an intellectual movement called traditionalism, and describe how, you can go from René Guénon to 1960s, 1970s terrorism.
Sure.
That's sort of the idea, and pretty much touch on things that we are more familiar with, like, Siege and Siege influenced books, which in many ways are very similar to some
now,
of
when you say terrorism, you mean like Years of Lead, Italy kind of stuff, right? I mean, we should make this clear for audiences.
Mean, yes, mostly like CIA-connected groups of young Italian fascists killing civilians in the dozens by planting bombs on train stations and so on. And usually anarchists and communists are being blamed for this.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And all because some Arctic immortal fucked a lemur.
Yeah. So we read René Guénon's book because he's somehow the founder of this traditionalist current, and he basically set some of the main, tenets of this school, let's call it, in that book. And then we moved on to Julius Evola, one of, a follower of René Guénon, but like a specific one who mentored his own followers, which were mostly coming from the fascist movement, and then the young neo-fascists in post-Second World War Italy were mostly his followers. And then he has a trilogy of books. Like, he wrote many books about many subjects, but he has like these three main books, which are like have more a general overview of how he sees the world. So one was the one that we just mentioned already, Revolt Against the Modern World, which we covered in 2 episodes. Yeah. That's like his most important book.
Most famous one. Every post-war Nazi loves it.
And then there are 2 more that are more like, now we are talking about the second book in this, let's call it trilogy, which is called A Man Among the Ruins. And this is now, the first book was like, that's like the really deep stuff, that's the foundation of his worldview. And now
we are really smart.
Yes. Yeah. And this is not so smart, I have to say.
Oh.
It's a pretty terrible book.
They can't all be hits, like Revolts Against the Modern World.
I mean, it's this is like now he's moving into the political plane, He's trying to tell the young fascists or neo-fascists of 1950s, trying to help them orientate a little bit in the modern world, So it's based in some way on the previous book, but it's trying to be more practical in a sense of like talking about some things that they could help them orientate in 1950s Italy, let's say. This is his idea, at least what he wants to do. And so all the other books that he wrote about are more like, have very specific, particular kind of topics. These 3 books are more general, let's say. So, Man Among the Ruins is this fucking book that I hate.
Pretty good title for the episode there.
I mean, at least it's not that long, but it feels long.
Yeah, sure. We've had a lot of those.
It's a man against the ruins, standing up like men.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, there is a connection to that what you were doing now. You will see.
I'm sure Matthews. There is.
Yeah, Bob Matthews. There is an order appears at the end of this book.
Heyo.
Are they taking shots of milk or?
No. They are Italians. Okay, so
yeah.
So about these ruins, though, just as a preview, is there any snow on these ruins? Any blood on the snow on these ruins? Maybe even some snow on that blood?
I think all of that is on the ruins. I mean, he doesn't really.
Again, they're Italian, so this is a more Mediterranean climate. There is maybe dust on the ruins.
A little bit of olive oil.
Yeah, a little olive oil on the ruins.
Yeah.
I don't see neofolk really taking off in Italy, but who knows?
I think that there is a pretty significant Italian neofolk scene, unfortunately.
Why? They have every opportunity to enjoy fucking life and going outside, not being in a basement neofolk band.
No, but some of them really wanted to, and that's what they did. Okay. So the subtitle in the English translation of this book is Post-War Reflections of a Radical Traditionalist. Okay.
Okay.
And so the book was published in 1953. The previous book was originally published in the 30s and then was republished in a new edition in the 60s, I think. So this is a book from the early 50s. This is the period when Evola was arrested and had to defend himself in court from being a fascist, which he did by claiming that he's a super fascist.
Yes.
That's defense. It's a good offense, they say.
And this worked. So first, Evola starts with examining like terminology, like how should you call yourself? Are you counter-revolutionary? Are you a reactionary? Are you a conservative? What are you? A little bit orientation even in that sense, like how to, what terminology to apply to yourself as a young neo-fascist.
Is it like a choose your own adventure thing? If you say that, like, okay, I'm a neo-fascist, you have a different way in this book to go, like with a different ending.
Oh, great. Turn to page 68, and then you fall into a well.
Yeah, I mean,
nice.
You cannot say that you are a neo-fascist because then you go to jail.
Go to jail,
fascist, especially in this time. So they don't even like really discuss using that term. Okay. He does discuss some of the like good sides of fascism sometimes, but on the whole, he kind of rejects it, says that it was a failure. Let's say, but we'll come to that. So what he says that about the modern world is that the spread of the disease of the modern world, all of the ideologies which are the disease of the modern world, it really started in the end of the 18th century, like this latest phase. Of course, we know that it started like 1,000,000 years ago, or whatever.
Yeah, forever.
But this is a more practical book. Okay, so it's not about there's no hyperbole here. Okay. So
thank God.
Yes. So he talks about the subversion introduced in Europe by the revolutions from 1789 until 1848. And he talks about it as the subversion. And so this is the subversion of the anti-traditionalist movement, of the revolutionary movement of the late 18th and the 19th centuries, and ideologies such as liberalism, democracy, and Marxism. So, which all needs to be like, if you want to, be against all of this, you need to reject it completely, cut it out from the root. So therefore, the term counter-revolutionary is not such a bad one, because, the subversion was introduced in Europe through these revolutions. There you are against revolution, so you're a counter-revolutionary. That's not so bad, he says. Except there is like, maybe it's a bit outdated, he says, because many people don't really, these revolutions are not in their consciousness because they were like a long time ago. So a better term in some sense is maybe reaction, and to call yourself a reactionary. But this is like he says this is a true test of courage to call oneself a reactionary. And most conservatives and right-wingers are not courageous enough to do that. And it is also important, he says, to specify that, reaction is not only about reacting to what the revolutionaries do, it's also about having some kind of a positive way of doing something in a positive way. So a good then
like terrorism,
for example, yes.
Yeah.
But
what is terrorism?
Yeah. So he says, that then an even better term is a conservative revolutionary.
So one of our favorites lately.
Yeah, it has a dynamic element to it, he says, which is very obvious.
Wait, in the sense that it's literally a contradiction in terms?
I guess so, yes.
Is that the dynamism he's talking about?
So this is, this type of revolutionary activity is not a subversive one, obviously. It is to re-establish the order. So it's to fight against the prevailing disorder. And he says to re-establish the state of normalcy, because as we explained, both for Guénon and for Evola, tradition is a normal state.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Evola. Look at his face. Do you not see the most normal-looking dude ever?
Well, that's what you think because you are, completely the creature of this degenerated world.
Oh, you're right. I've been trained to think that people who look like Count Dracula are scary-looking, when in fact, they're hot. I'm talking 90s Count Dracula. Bram Stoker's.
I'm more of a Count Chocula guy here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm down with Chocula.
Yeah, he's like a Bela Lugosi type of character. Okay.
AKA normal.
Yes. Well, in a traditional society.
In the traditional society.
We don't live in.
Yeah.
You're just jealous because you don't rock the monocle.
Oh, man. I would, though. You know I would. When that comes back, I'm there.
Yeah. I could actually see you with that.
I don't mind not seeing
really.
out of one eye.
No, I don't see it.
You don't see it?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, listen. Those of us who have always sided with the Catonic, furry communist witches of our past just aren't fit for monocles. That's not our station.
Fair enough.
We need 2 lenses in our glasses.
So Evola also says that, you should be careful when calling yourself a conservative because very little today, if anything, should be conserved. It should all just
great. So they're not revolutionaries and they're not conservatives. So let's go with conservative revolutionary. Perfect.
Yes. And he says that also, conservatives were not so great because historically they sided with the ruling classes and defended the privileges of the ruling classes. And this is not what conservatives should be about in Evola's very strange mind. What the conservatives should do is, they should defend the ideals and ideas, principles, values, and not the privileges of a ruling class, especially in a world that's not traditional anymore.
Okay,
right,
so these values are what?
Well, who the fuck knows? I guess
this poor people.
It's like things like honor and and also like the authority, imperium, and so on.
Okay, so really concrete things.
Yes.
Yeah.
One can base their ideology around.
But that's all he has, right? Because the current ruling class is illegitimate because the true nobility has been lost to time. Yeah, lost to modernity.
So also what is, at the heart of what it means to be a conservative revolutionary is not to be faithful to past forms of, government or something like this, but to be faithful to principles that these forms were based on. So today you can have forms that are different, but they should be based on those same principles. So he says, things like this, when you ask what those principles are, he says, for conservative revolution, supreme values and principles of every healthy and normal institution are not liable to change and to becoming. So these are principles such as true state, imperium, authority, hierarchy, justice, primacy of political over social and economical. So in the domain of these values, there is no history. They don't change. They are always the same.
Okay, so authority and all these things are continuous things that never change.
Yes, through authority.
And that's a good thing.
That's a good thing, yes.
Okay.
Because especially, if you have an imperium that has a center to it, which means it has legitimate authority that comes from above. It doesn't have legitimacy based in like the plebeians or something like that. It has, legitimacy comes from God, or he calls it the supernatural or something like that. And then everything in the imperium is oriented, starting from this center, as he calls it, or something like this. Then you have a traditional society in which all the caste or classes know their place, and they're doing what they're supposed to do, and everything is fine.
I see. But what about traditional societies in which there isn't this like imperium concept?
I think this is not possible.
Which
they wouldn't be traditional. No. Again, you're having the problem I had before. You got to just let your mind go. Let all reason go. Nothing he's saying probably lines up with like a sociological or historical object.
No,
right?
Because his methodology in reading things is finding, what in whatever they can find or think they found in some text or something like that. If it corresponds to their ideas of what tradition is, then it's traditional. If it doesn't correspond, then it's some kind of degenerated form or something like that.
So like what, Athenian democracy, for instance? Like this is a classical society. What would his position be on something like that then?
I don't know. I never read the books that I read. He never referred to it, I think.
I wonder why.
But so I don't know what he would say. But
he is quite the cherry picker.
He gives many examples of like ancient, societies or something like this that were like kind of in some way degenerated or had this, chthonic influence, the feminine influence in them, and such things, or Atlantean, because Atlanteans were also not, the best. They were not Hyperborean.
No,
they were. So that's also, So the foundation of every true state is transcendence.
This is very, again, very clear things.
Yes.
Yeah, so don't fight it.
All of its principles, like sovereignty, authority, legitimacy, have this transcendent character to them. So, for example, in ancient Rome, imperium, the whole idea of imperium belonged to the domain of sacred. And this is what he thinks of an empire, a true empire. He like, there was in the Holy Roman Empire, there was this conflict between different aristocratic families, Guelphs and Ghibellines, and he's on the side of Ghibellines because they were the ones who supported the emperor and the empire, and not the church. But for him, this is not like a secular powers against the church. It's the conflict between two different sacred institutions that are both, so the empire to him almost has its own priesthood, like in the orders that he, like the knightly orders that he likes so much, like the Templars and Teutonic Knights and so on. And it has its own religion, which is not a Christian one. And this is this religion of the Holy Grail and, other things that he likes. He thinks that this is like the European imperial religion that existed.
I mean, so wait, what did he think of the Ottoman Empire?
Well, hold on. Before you go to the Ottomans, I just wanted to point out one small thing. And that is that I really wish that instead of conservative revolutionary then, he had called himself a Gibellist and had encouraged his followers to call themselves Gibellists. And I think that was a missed opportunity. Sorry, continue, Boris.
Well, I don't know. I think he probably preferred it to modern states, for sure.
I'm a Gibellist. I'm not a fascist. I'm a Gibellist. Yes. I'm a neo-Gibellist.
Yeah.
I like it. Anyway, Ottomans?
Yeah, for sure prefer them to modern states, yeah.
So, I mean, like, Janissaries to him are some sort of okay thing.
I imagine so. I mean, what I read, he didn't really talk about the Ottoman Empire or Janissaries, but
I'm just curious because he does have a lot of followers in places where they're like, oh, the Janissaries were the worst thing that ever happened to our people.
I mean, well, listen, his teacher, Renan was a Muslim convert.
Right, exactly. Which is why I'm thinking about this.
Who lived in Egypt. And there is a guy, there is an Anglican priest who is an Italian guy who became an Anglican priest, and he lives in Britain, and he wrote a book about Evola. He knew Evola personally. He was, I think, one of the...
Sorry, what's his name? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I might have listened to him today. I'm not sure.
I think he wrote a book called Imam of Rome or something like this. Mm-hmm. And so he was one of these young fascists that was visiting Evola in the 60s, 70s. I don't know when.
Oh, okay.
And then his idea, he thinks that Evola was actually a secret Muslim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Word.
Like Obama.
Yes. Nice.
Wow.
Alhamdulillah.
So he says, if you acknowledge the principle of sovereignty, then it's also necessary to recognize its attribute of absoluteness. So for Evola, a power and authority that is not absolute is not real authority or real power. So the law can never apply to the one who acts as a leader. And that's the whole point of being a leader, is that you're above law. So I think he also now basically quotes Carl Schmitt, the Nazi law theorist, who he was a friend of Ernst Junger, and maybe Evola knew him as well.
Yeah, been a minor character on our show before.
So Carl, I think this is, he says this as if it's not a quote, I think, but I think it's basically paraphrasing Carl Schmitt. He says the essence of the principle of sovereignty is the power of making absolute decisions in exceptional or emergency situations, beyond any duties and discussions, whenever the existing right and laws are suspended or their suspension is required. So the exceptional powers or a dictatorship are devices of necessity in the right circumstances when something like that is needed. And dictatorship, in a traditional sense, is not a revolutionary phenomenon. On the contrary, it represents legitimacy, and it's a temporary remedy. And the purpose of it is to reintegrate the society, let's say. So the state of Evola says is not an expression of society. It's not a social or communal phenomenon. It's a political phenomenon which should dominate society and economy and so on. And, the values of the political dominion are hierarchy, heroism, anti-hedonism, and also to a certain, he uses this weird term, anti-eudaimonistic, I guess, or something like this. It means, I guess, against anti-welfare or anti-well-being in some sense. So it's, the values of the politics are not about the well-being of society or something like that.
Yeah,
they are about the ideals of these ideals that he talks about that should dominate society.
The ideals being authority and whatever. Yeah, okay.
So the roots of the state, contrary to what many think, are in what? They are in something that he calls the Mannerbund.
Oh, that sounds really nice.
Yes, he uses the German term, basically means male.
Who use the German term?
Yeah, the male societies or or warrior societies.
Yes, okay. He likes the guys.
Oh, he loves the guys.
Yeah.
If they are
he
right
does
sort
not
of guys.
like the women. That's true.
No. So, in a traditional society, and I guess to some degree in some primitive societies, according to him as well, until a certain age, boys are just in this general category of beings that includes children, women, and animals. Oh. And then at some point, a boy is approached by men who take him, and then a boy goes through these rites of passage, and he changes his nature and status and becomes a different kind of being, which is a man.
It's called a bar mitzvah.
That's what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say.
So, Nagila.
Well, okay. So, for the Mannerpund, this is a little bit serious
they just want
business.
To have a bar mitzvah party.
This is fucking cosmotheism all over again.
They're like,
it's a bit more.
Jews have a better party when they turn 13.
Well, okay, this is not about a party. It's like about something horrible, according to Evola.
It's never about a party with him.
Because before the rites of passage, you have a period of detachment and isolation, and then you go to harsh trials. Okay. Which are supposed to generate this new being. So, the men are being assholes to you, and then you become this kind of detached asshole.
In my case, it was a goth, but go on.
Yes. And this is how you become a man.
That was exactly how it happened.
Okay, so
that was my high school experience right there.
You get traumatized through some sort of horrible abuse.
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly what he's, so I'm also thinking I'm thinking I immediately had this idea of what are the assholes called? Skull and Bones. And stupid shit they do. Do they believe this? They did kind of found the CIA and so on. So they are the state in a literal sense, many of them. But do they also believe that they are in this deeper sense the state? That they are go through these rituals and abuse each other, and this is some kind of
jerk off in a coffin.
Yes, piss on each other and so on. Is this the spiritual origin of the state according to them?
I think it must be.
I think so. There was a push. I think now they accept women, but there was for the first time. I think there was a push for that in the 70s, and then I think in the 90s they made them accept women. Skull and Bones, and all of their old members were horrified by this idea that women should be William F. Buckley, for example, did a campaign against this. He's I
couldn't possibly imagine that. When these piss on my face.
Well, that's what I was going to say that when usually when that happens, it's it's not typically a sign of great respect that they have for women.
Yeah.
I think it's probably hard for them to make that jump.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, if maybe some of those people are into this stuff,
what cracks me up is that, there's so many, there are a lot of societies out there that do have very brutal rites of initiation from childhood to adulthood. But, there's a difference between doing that when you live in unbelievably harsh and sparse conditions that require an enormous amount of danger, on a common basis, versus a guy named Baron Evola, who and his fucking rich friends,
who call himself a baron, by the way.
What are they preparing for?
Well, yeah.
Well, preparing to be pedophiles, all of us.
Yes, it's very different. You don't need to get beaten by sharpened sticks
so I can
have a brunch party with fucking rich friends.
Well, listen, if you were for example, in the Skull and Bones, you're preparing to be a CIA agent or something like that. In the Cold War, that's the fucking you are a warrior.
I guess they were in a way,
and you're drunk all the day.
True.
You're just searching for those spies.
Yeah,
and you're talking
certainly.
And you're talking to your best friend Ken Philby, who's been working for the Soviets for 40 years, and you're giving him all of your secrets.
Yeah,
and that's what you're doing
because you're mates who drink together in some club.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I love that whole British drinking culture and these clubs where they just got completely fucking wasted out of their minds and had no idea what was going on. Then, they'd be like, oh, one of us is a spy. Oopsies.
Yep.
And Angleton probably knew this book, since we're joking about him right now, just to point that out, right? I mean, this is pretty close to his activity at this point.
Well, actually, there is a direct... it's good that you said this. I almost forgot about a direct connection with Angleton.
Oh. This is X2 Gladio.
I was
48
literally
elections,
thinking about like PG Wodehouse kind of people just now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What is the connection? Yeah.
So the foreword to this book was written by Prince Valerio Borghese, who was
him.
He was the commander of the Decima Mas, what are they? I mean, they're like fascist Navy SEALs, let's say. And who were
Green
like
Berets.
Yeah, who were, like loyal to the Nazis more than to Mussolini and fought until the very end. They were part of the Salo Republic and so on. And Borghese was especially ruthless to partisans, hanging them in the streets and so on. And he was directly recruited by Angleton after the war to work for the CIA and so on, and to become one of the leaders of the neo-fascist movement, and even attempted some ridiculous coup at some point in post-war Italy and so on, and was, Evola's friend and wrote a foreword for this book.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So the state is masculine, the society is feminine.
What a way to start that sentence, yes.
I'm going to make that the teaser cut. Oh, we don't have a teaser. It's a fuck. Oh, it's one of them free episodes. That would have been a perfect. I just want you saying that intro music. That's it. The state is masculine. Society is feminine.
Yes. Society is is the dominion of Mother Earth, and the plebeian strata of society, the scum. So, in contrast to that, you have the other, sphere, which is the state and imperium and orders and duties and so on. But so now here is the trick.
It sounds like it sucks, honestly.
Yes, it sucks.
Yeah, it always does.
So the same opposition of state versus society is basically enforced when it comes to the opposition of state versus nation. So Evola, as a true reactionary, is not a fan of nations. He thinks that nations and nationalism and fatherland and people all belong to this naturalistic and biological plane and not to the political one. So they are basically social, they are part of society, not of the state of hierarchy and so on.
Mm-hmm.
How do politicians reproduce in his world? Do they have physical sex, or do they just sprout?
Actually, he says that he prefers has said something directly about it. I will tell you a little bit later in the end. So the development of nations was an anti-aristocratic move, an anti-hierarchical development. It came from the states in Europe that refused to acknowledge the superior authority of the Holy Roman Empire, which he loves the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, so this move, the four nation states and nations as such, shaped the structures that will eventually end up in the hands of the third estate, and even later in the hands of a collectivity known as a nation or the people in the process of the French Revolution, which he thinks is, a total blasphemy for the world of tradition. And since then, nationalism has been the ally of revolution, constitutionalism, liberalism, democracy, and all the bad things. And he also says something funny. The things that he doesn't like, he calls promiscuous. So he says the nation will always be a promiscuous entity.
A flirty little hussy, no?
Yes.
Well, nation.
Yes. So on the other hand, you have, men and their boons who adhere to the idea of an impersonal action. Like they are cold and impersonal, which is great.
Cold hard men.
And an idea must always be the true fatherland for these men, not some nation or something like that. So he also talks about the opposition between the organic state and totalitarian state. He's not completely against totalitarianism, but he advises his young followers to give up on it because it failed. It wasn't great. It was some attempt, had some good sides. It was mostly bad and it failed. And the name is not good. It's a very modern word that it's better left for liberals and others the way they use it to call what they want to call. And the conservative revolutionaries, according to Evola, should adopt this ideal of an organic state, which is not some kind of a new idea. It's an ancient idea. It's basically, is as if you were saying the traditional state, according to him, like it's synonymous with that. So he thinks that it's ancient and that every true state has always had a certain organic character. And he says something like this: a state is organic when it has a center, an idea that shapes the various domains of life in an efficacious way. By virtue of a system of hierarchical participation, every part within it has relative autonomy and performs its own function and enjoys an intimate connection with the whole. So like in organic states, all parts have their own place and a relative autonomy, but at the same time, they're closely connected to the whole of the society and also to the center of imperium.
I love that he's so fucking against promiscuity and like free sexuality, but he starts talking about the state and you get words like intimate whole.
Yes. Well, actually, he's not against promiscuity, but I will even mention something about that later on. Or maybe he would say that he's against promiscuity, but he is for having lots of sex for sure. He doesn't think of as promiscuous, I guess.
He hates it.
He's going to reproduce quite prodigiously.
Yeah, like Elon. He's pulling an Elon.
No, it's interesting. He criticizes the Catholic Church in that regard. I'll come to that soon, I think. So, this spiritual character to an organic state is what integrates every part. It's not coercion. So there is some kind of a relative autonomy and decentralization in an organic state. These are like some of the features of such a state. And this is what the lack of coercion and autonomy and decentralization is what differs organic state from a totalitarian one. Totalitarianism was, according to Evola, just a counterfeit image of a true organic ideal. The unity in a totalitarian state was imposed from outside, and it had a tendency for uniformity and intolerance for autonomy and any degree of freedom, which he thinks is bad.
Right. So he also thinks freedom is bad, though.
He thinks some kind of freedom is good, but not a bourgeois kind of freedom. I don't know what is his, how he defines. He believes in higher humans who should have more autonomy.
Yeah, it's like that Yuga anarch thing, I guess.
Yes. So the structures of a totalitarian state become all pervasive without any restraints, and they organize everything in rigid schemes which have no meaning. So he doesn't like that. And totalitarianism is also not a completely modern thing. It had its own precursors in ancient societies, usually in the degenerate phases of the empires. Then they would lower themselves in some kind of a totalitarian way of organizing.
That would be Oswald Spengler's Caesarian
I guess, yes. Yeah. He talks about Bonapartism. He doesn't like it. He says although, kind of it looks good as a very authoritarian system and so on, but it's a consequence of the democratic principle and of popular representation. So he says even in democracies, effective power ends up in the hands of a minority, a small group that in some way separates itself from the masses. And Bonapartism is an extreme consequence of democracy. It is a despotism based on a democratic view. It de facto denies democracy, but in theory it fulfills it. So even these types of regimes are usually legalized through some democratic means, through plebiscite or something like that. So the leader in such a system is a son of the people, which is, for him, a complete inversion of the traditional way for a leader to be defined.
The daddy of the people. But also one that doesn't care about the people. He's that kind of daddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
The leader should be son of God, really, according to him, not son of people. So he has value, or a god, ideally, Mm-hmm. So in a Bonapartist system, the leader has value only in relation to the collective group, to the masses. So this means that we are still within the boundaries of democracy in such a system. He's not an embodiment of a higher humanity and a bearer of a higher principle. He's someone who appeals to the lowest levels of human beings, flattering them and manipulating them. So Evola is also not a fan of work. I think we mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. Today, there is a kind of inversion of the place of work and economy. Economy now rules everything, which is, how the political should be always dominant, not the economical one, according to tradition. So he agrees with Werner Sombart, the sociologist, when he said that we are living in the age of economy today, which he thinks is like a demonic state. And today he says it's possible to speak of a demonic nature of the economy because in both individual and collective life, the economic factor is the most important, real and decisive one. Moreover, the tendency to converge every value and interest on the economic and productive plane is not perceived by the Western man as an unprecedented aberration, but instead as something normal and natural. And this subversive character of in the view of economy is found both in Marxism and in modern capitalism. It's interesting, although he claims to be against capitalism, he always talks about modern capitalism.
Right.
As opposed to what? Pre-modern capitalism?
Well, you'll hear soon.
What the fuck's he talking about? Okay.
Yeah. Ancient capitalism. Yeah. So he thinks that it's absurd and deplorable that even the men of the right have no courage to leave this small circle of demonic power of the economy. Like if you're like a rightist and you don't have, the balls to like be against that, he thinks that's like very deplorable, and he feels sad that most right wingers and conservatives are like made some kind of compromise with modern capitalism. And he
How
says
the fuck did this guy get popular? I mean, clearly everyone's wrong but him. He has just basically talked shit about almost everyone that you would think is a natural ally in some way, at least in some small way.
Italy had to lose the Second World War for him to get some popularity among some people.
Okay.
So it's like, they had a significant fascist movement, and then, some of them aligned themselves
fascism.
Yes, there were actual numbers there, of course many anti-fascists, but there were like a lot of fascists, and some of them were like fanatical enough to, stay loyal to the Reich until the very end, and then many of them died, and some of them had children who became the neo-fascist and were kind of confused, like, what are we supposed to do? So we're looking for different kind of authorities who, and Evola was like, he was very persistent. He was writing this like in 1953 and so on. He wrote a lot of books, and he had the will to have followers and pupils and to tell them what they need to do. And he's, claimed to have some connection with some ancient
this was
wisdom.
well after the time that this was fashionable and
So he says that modern capitalism is just as subversive as Marxism, because it has this idea of a materialistic view of life, and both systems are based on it, and their values are technology, science, production, productivity, consumption, and so on. So in that sense, they are equal, and this is the proof of the pathology of our civilization, he says. He thinks that the whole value of the economy should be questioned, and in a way, the supremacy of the economy as such should be rejected. He thinks that one cannot have some kind of a quasi-neutral view of economy, and the whole idea of Homo economicus is like a fake one. It's like it's a fiction, or maybe if it exists, then it's a consequence of a degenerated society. In a traditional society, someone who would be serving only economical functions would be only someone of the lowest extraction, social extraction. It's like something that no one, everyone would look as quite pathetic, according to him. And terms such as capitalist and proletarian don't really mean anything in traditional society. They lack any foundation, he says, in a normal civilization.
I think proletarian a Roman concept?
Yes, of course.
An ancient Roman concept?
Exactly, yes. So he also thinks it's wrong to say that Marxism arose because of some real problems that needed to be sorted out. And he, in fact, thinks that they're making things worse. And where there was no proletarian spirit, they are making it. Like,
fuck yeah.
They are making workers into proletarians who are dissatisfied even when they were originally not, and so on. I mean, Evola, he's a real moron, as you will see.
Yes. I was about to say they would rather have had their true station represented and not engage in this revolutionary activity. And I was going to rag on him for being like, but blah, blah, Marx did so well. Where are all of your worker supporters? But then I realized he's so smart because he doesn't want worker support. So he can say whatever he wants and we'll never have to test any of it.
No, of course, no.
It's a perfect system.
Yeah. So also he's very, I think, angry because of the fact that the Italian constitution states that Italy is a state based on work, which he thinks is just the worst thing you can say about the state. And that was actually, I think, a compromise between the Communist Party and other parties. I think the communists, which were quite strong after the Second World War, wanted the working class explicitly to be mentioned in the constitution, but the compromise was to say that it was based on work. And
but that's not the compromise. That's the same thing as always, right? Saying that there is no working class. There is your work, though. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Yeah, but to say that it's based on it, it's some kind of I think
an acknowledgement. Yeah,
I think
most enshrined in the Constitution in some way or another.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, American capitalists think of themselves as the ones who create, wealth, and
they're job creators, right?
And wealth and so on. So yes. I think they would be very much against saying something like this, no? That the US is based on work and labor, for example, not on...
Tell that to socialist Joe Biden.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they would, yes, that would be unacceptable, I think.
Yes.
If it was in the Constitution... That infallible document. That,
yeah. We're already having a hard time with the word equal. Let's not bring work into this.
So I have a great example of how stupid Evola is.
Wait, wasn't that the last 3 episodes?
No, but this is like really dumb. Because now it's more obvious that he's dumb because he's talking about the world that we know, he's giving more current examples.
Right. He's not just making up lore that we can't look up.
So, he wants to say how the Western mind is so, economistic and all about and materialistic and so on. And he's like comparing this with some peoples and so on, which just still have some traditional spirit and so on. And so he gives an example of an American company operating in some non-European country, and they want, but the participation of the locals in their company was scarce, as he says. So they wanted to motivate people to work more and get jobs in their company and so on. So they doubled the pay, Evola says, in order to attract them, which is like not how it works, but okay, let's say that happened. And then another thing that never happens and cannot happen happened according to Evola, which was that then the locals just cut their work hours in half because they were satisfied with working only.
Evola like went to Hawaii and he was like, I saw the people that are very happy with their coconuts, and then
yeah. So
they dance for us in the hula dance, and
yeah. So he says how they're like non-economistic mind, not polluted by capitalism, just trick the American capitalists or so whatever. Which is like totally like this example is like not. This is stupid. This is not how it works. You cannot just cut your own work hours. What are you talking about? And like in such a way, and like and also like
yes, it's a very very realistic example I'm giving.
Yes.
Not even for a workers' debutante party.
Yeah. And also like so many people today, like in the West in 2023. Would want to do that if they could, like work less for double the money. Like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
Like it's no. Everyone would just continue working like 24 hours per day because they have the Western economistic mind.
If only we could. If only it wasn't for the goddamn socialists not letting me work 24 hours a day, like my natural state requires.
Yes. Okay. Let me see. Where are we?
How about some terrorism?
Well, yes.
I mean, some terrorism.
We don't have terrorism because this is like he would go to jail for that. We only have this ideology that he made for terrorists. He also is like bitching that people today call work what is not work, because traditionally the work was only like the reserved for the lowest type of activity, and other things were not called that. They were called action.
Oh, damn. Man of action he is.
Today, people even what is action call work. Like if they do art, they call it work or whatever, and he thinks this is, despicable. He
would call it an action of art? Like when he goes to a museum, he admires actions of art?
Nice.
Yes.
He sounds fun.
Yes.
Yes.
So he talks about militarism a lot. He likes militarism. He thinks that militarism is the enemy of democracy. But what's going on there is that there is a opposition between, traditional Prussian type of militarism and then the Angloid ideas of democracy, So, because the Anglo-Saxon, American, British societies are mercantile in character, they use mercenaries, they don't have warriors, they have soldiers, and they're like very bourgeois, So they are dominated by concerns of safety, well-being, and material wealth. And in such societies, such bourgeois Western societies, the civilian element is entrusted with the running of the state. And military is subordinated to them. And it's only used as an instrument. but in the other, society like the Prussian one, which is a modern example of such a society, you have things such as military honor and virtues such as discipline and the feelings of a military type acquire prominence of superior dignity over other feelings and virtues of more bourgeois types. I am supposed to read a quote here from the book. I will read something. I wrote that I'm supposed to read a sentence, so I will just read it.
Okay. Trust yourself. Trust your past self.
Yeah.
This is something you wrote to yourself while suffering from a heat stroke-induced fever, right?
And reading Yuga's Evola, which did not help. So Evola says about militarism. Love for hierarchy, relationships of obedience and command, courage, feelings of honor and loyalty, specific forms of active impersonality capable of producing anonymous sacrifice, frank and open relationship from man to man, from one comrade to another, from leader to follower. All these are characteristic living values that are predominant in the aforementioned view. These are the values found in what I have called Mannerbund.
Mannerbund is all right with me, dog.
I gotta say, I in all seriousness though, I mean, Yuga Evola is like the only author I can think of that makes like bourgeois liberal society seem kind of okay by comparison to the shit that he likes,
Yeah, because he equates it to like for example, well-being, concerns of well-being.
Yes, yes, those fucking pansies.
Which he rejects. Fuck the well-being.
Anonymous sacrifice or nothing.
Why would you? Why?
So he also thinks that, this Prussian model had its influence on other spheres of society. So this is when I think Boris asks, so he doesn't like modern capitalism. What is he talking about? He likes, I think, more the Prussian model because it produced a quasi-dynastic lines of entrepreneurs who were respected and obeyed by workers, is how he pictures it.
I'm not actually sure that's how it was.
Also, why would he care about any of that? Like, isn't that materialistic, that relationship anyway? He's talking about fucking workers and owners and shit.
It is, but it's subservient to political militaristic system, according to him.
Of course.
Which is good.
So it's yes, it's in its right place, and it's an entrepreneur who is like a technical leader and a manager, and not like some speculative financier asshole,
I see.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Damn.
So war today kind of sucks, because all the ideologies are bad. Ideologies are bad on each side. So, and he says this can seem demoralizing if you are a fucking bourgeois. If you have a bourgeois spirit. If you don't, then you can do this. You can invert the relationship between means and the cause or ends. So
you can just do whatever you want.
Yes. So you would invert the relationship between means and ends. Okay. So the cause of a war, which sucks because it's a modern war and it's bad, but you can just see it as a means for the realization of the experience of a war. As its own end,
The silver lining. Because look on the bright side. It's a war.
Yes.
Faceless corpses lie everywhere. What's not to love?
It has autonomous value, is what he says.
Yes, right.
So he's a fucking idiot. He doesn't like Catholics. This is still the case. He says that when he uses the word tradition, he doesn't want it to be confused with these traditional Catholics and so on. That's not the real tradition.
I made that mistake on the first episode, actually.
Yeah, it can only be half traditional because they have the church has parts that are not Christian in origin. So at best it can be half traditional, but usually in these days it's not even that.
But he's also he's the head of state. It should be perfect. He's a functioning, actual, absolute monarch in a state.
But he is not the Pontifex Maximus, okay?
What else do you need to do?
He's very mad that he calls himself that. That's like, that's an inversion and blasphemy. He cannot be the head of a state. That's you need an emperor who's also the high priest, and then you have the church, which is, serves the emperor and the state.
How does one become that?
Well, that's the problem. It's a problem.
Terrorism. Is it terrorism? It's terrorism, right?
He's not completely sure. He has some advice in the end, but it's pretty weak, I have to say.
Fucking Evola. God damn it.
Yes. So, economy. Economy is bad, almost as the Catholics are. Or no, it's even worse than the Catholics, I think. So, in order to overcome the status that economy has today, the first thing it's very surprising. You know what you need to get rid of?
Jews?
Not Jews. I mean, they will come to Jews soon. But no, it's classism.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Yes. So he sounds like a total liberal here because the class system in itself is not a problem. What is a problem is classism, because everyone should be proud to be a part of a certain class.
Yes, and I'm proud to say that your class are subhuman.
Yes. So he wants corporatism. He wants a corporativist system. Right. So the fundamental spirit of such a system was, he thinks in ancient times, he doesn't now talk about fascism, was that of a community of work and productive solidarity based on the principles of competence, qualification, and natural hierarchy, with an overall system characterized by a style of active impersonality, selflessness, and dignity. This is how he sees the economy should work. So the fascist corporatist system failed because there was a double alignment in the companies. There was a corporate alignment, but there was also alignment based on working class or owners. Like there were still unions, and he thinks this is bad. And one of the reasons why it failed. The other reason why it failed was that unity of work was not reconstructed in every company or in every factory, but outside in the context of a bureaucratic system. So it wasn't real. So what you need to do is you need to deproletarize the worker. And the other thing, you need to eliminate the worst type of capitalists. So who are the worst type of capitalists? Do you have any ideas?
Are you gonna make him? You're gonna make him guess again? I got you, Boris. I got you. It's the Mennonites.
No, it's probably the other religious group, but he doesn't talk about Jews now. Now he talks about the modern capitalist financiers and speculators. Mm-hmm. They developed in a superior type of capitalist, which was the entrepreneur that we mentioned, I guess, of the Prussian type. And then we had these financiers and speculators. But in these days, he says this is even worse. Now you have just these people who cash in the dividends, and they actually don't even know where they come from. So they are really the worst kind of scum, he thinks. And the struggle against them should be led from above, by the state. Okay, not by proletarians, but the state should put his capitalists in order and even be very brutal and strict to some of them and totally get rid of whole groups of capitalists that are just parasites. He is against the socialization of the means of production. He doesn't want companies to be run by workers and owned by them. And now this is another example how stupid he is. He says, and how he doesn't know anything about, how things work in capitalism. So he said he's against that. He's against profit sharing with the workers. But he says a good antidote towards that would be if you make them also share the deficit.
I see. Like, so it take money away from them.
Yes,
if the company goes down. Well,
which is like, how does he think? Like, who thinks does cover the deficit? Like, not the workers.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're only sharing the deficit now. Like, I mean, that's how it works. That's the whole fucking point.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
So, but what Evola wants is for the workers. This is interesting. Another stupid idea. He wants the workers to gradually become small owners, but not like he only wants to have them non-transferable stocks that they cannot use to like manipulate in the market and so on. So if you work a long time, you should somehow become some kind of a small owner, but this should never be in such a degree that the hierarchy between real owners and workers is disturbed.
So you should become a stock owner that has absolutely no power? It doesn't make sense.
And no ability to sell your stock, apparently. Well, I feel like he's just sort of kind of like writing off the dome and maybe just kind of going with the first thought that comes up, because none of this really seems fleshed out. It really kind of feels like he's asking himself a question, answering it on the spot, and just moving on to the next one without really putting a lot of thought
maybe
into
it's also, a part of that is my reading of this, which
I doubt it.
I really tried to compress all of this. I read the whole fucking book, I didn't skip anything, but I was like, okay, this is dumb, and I only didn't take as many notes as I usually do. But it's also a book made for young fascists.
Right.
Right. This isn't like some deep intellectual piece.
No. This is like some. I mean, it reminds me of like PragerU a little bit, even. Like it's very dumbed down conclusions that seem to come from nowhere.
But it's also a book that's like recommended, like a part of the trilogy that you should read, like to understand what Evola is about.
Oh, and this definitely helped that, Ray. I mean, I definitely know what Evola is about now.
Yes.
He's a dumbass.
Yes.
That's
so I'm approaching the end here. It's not so much left. So we are almost there. So he's talking now about the occult war. Occult war is conspiracy theories. Okay.
All right.
He thinks this is very important. We should be aware of this, of the conspiracies that are going on. And he says this is like, this is a 3D view of history. Like most people only take into account two dimensions, time and space. But this is a look at history that sees the third dimension. And the third dimension are the Jews.
No, the time, space, and the Jews.
Why not? Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God.
To be honest, this is how I phrased it. How he phrased it was time, space, and depth. The subterranean currents. Okay.
Oh, is that what he means by depth? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So this is also the backstage, he says, of history, where specific intelligences, he says, are at work. The Christians, the church would say this is the unfolding of the divine providence. In traditionalist terms, what are we talking about is the conflict between the forces of cosmos against the forces of chaos.
Yes.
Oh, chaos!
Yes, of course, yes.
He says feminine. He also has some stupid sentence. He says, methodologically speaking, and then he says how you should not get completely crazy and see conspiracies everything in everywhere. So this is the methodologies.
But just ask yourself, what happened to the Atlanteans, man? What happened to Atlantis?
Yes. So he says methodology should be, you shouldn't be a complete nut. Like, is like how you should approach this subject. But then immediately after that, he starts talking about the protocols of the learned elders of Zion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
and
man.
he thinks this is the most useful book to consider here.
Okay.
He acknowledges that many people think it's a forgery, and he says quite possibly it's like not literally true, because as René Guénon said, like true secret organizations don't leave protocols behind, Like,
yes, that should be your first fucking clue, dude. But this is the Henry Ford line. We've heard this for ages and ages.
Yeah. And he cites Henry Ford, okay?
Ayo.
He cites Henry Ford and a couple of other anti-Semites to prove how, even though this is not literally true, it's actually true. Like, it's...
Right.
Because it's it completely shows how history develops, okay? And what happened, it's in the book. It's there. What the young fascists should keep in mind is that the Jews are not the only agents of chaos, and so they are the apostles of the worst anti-traditional ideologies. That's true, but there were precursors to those ideas that were not led by Jews, like Reformation and humanism and the Renaissance and so on.
Right.
Also, the Freemasonry is often used by these forces, but in itself, it's not of Jewish origin.
Yeah, he knows a great lodge called the P2. You'd love him.
Yes. But he says there are parts that are completely Judaized, I guess, or something like that, and are used for these chaotic, purposes, and for subversion, as he calls it. But also, in a way, these are forces of the past, because a lot of these Jewish agents of subversion were of the bourgeois type, and they are the ones who ushered in the rule of the third estate and the bourgeois revolutions and so on. And now we are moving away from that into the rule of the fourth estate, which he thinks is inevitable, the rule of the workers and the communist revolution and so on. And so this type of subversion led by the Jews is really a thing of the past, and the new agents of subversion are sometimes even themselves against the Jews and anti-Semitic. So that's even something that can happen, he says. And many of them are not controlled by Jews. He says you should not be so, crazy to think that like Mao's China is run by Jews or something like that,
Well.
So he's an anti-Semite and had the need to talk about
But a reasonable anti-Semite.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. He immediately after this, he starts talking about the problem of births. So he's now immediately going in the direction of what today's conspiracy theorists think is the agenda of the elites who control the society, because he's talking about the problem of overpopulation. He thinks there's too many people, especially because it's the bad, the poor, the proletarian, the worst kind of people. There so many of them,
Gross, ew.
And this feeds the demon of the economy, such large numbers of people. So we should get rid of that somehow. That would help us.
So does by deproletarianize, does he mean just like eliminate a lot of the proletariat?
I mean, he doesn't say that, but who knows what he means.
Okay.
What he says that is that the church should give up its stupid ideas about contraception and just embrace contraception, and that actually the church's Catholic view of sex is a very animalistic one, because they only see sex as something that can be used for procreation and don't see any spiritual value in itself, which he does, as someone who had regular tantric sessions and so on.
The Pope was not into tantric. That is true.
Well, I mean, not officially.
Not officially.
So,
man, when you're to the right of fucking Julius Evola, the super fascist on something, it might be time for a synod on synodality.
Yes. So he thinks that, their view of sex is like an anti-traditional one and so on. He did write a book which is called Metaphysics of Sex or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I bet it sucks.
Oh, for sure it sucks, yes.
Although now I kind of want to read it. I actually do kind of want to know what he thinks sex is supposed to be. I also want to know what he thinks is the proper thing to announce when you've finished. So, like our boy Myatt.
He thinks also that the church who should control the numbers of people and procreation and so on. So
you got your answer right there, Fritz.
All right.
So he's not for a totalitarian state and too much control and so on. But then he says Thus, it would be desirable for the state to take rigorous, systematic, prophylactic, repressive, and encouraging measures in this regard, despite the fact that in any other situation, such interventions in the private domain are intrusive and oppressive. For my part, I think that one can never stress too heavily the need for an anti-demographic policy, especially because due to an inner inhibition found even among qualified milieus, it is not possible to see the numerous and heavy contributions, whether direct or indirect, that growth in population has made and still makes to the crisis of the modern world. So it doesn't like people.
Yeah, I think that was clear from Ep 1 there.
So now I came to the last chapter of his stupid book. So the last chapter of this book is on the presuppositions of a united Europe. So Evola talks in the end about the need for a united Europe, but also that, the way they are doing it now is not the good way.
That's his whole shtick throughout all of his books, isn't it?
So, the European Union is bad.
Yes, it was the
or
European
the
Economical...
or whatever, yeah.
Whatever, community. It's bad because of course it's bad for Evola because they started for the thing that he hates the most, which is the economy. They started from coal and whatnot, This is they didn't start from having an emperor who is a son of God.
Yeah, they started from heating people in winter and bullshit like that.
Yes. So, the first thing to have a really good united Europe is that all European countries should immediately leave the United Nations, which is an illegitimate, hypocritical, and a promiscuous association.
Oh, promiscuous.
Nice. The European.
That's just the French, though.
Yeah. Well, so also all the European states should, emancipate themselves from the influence of the US and the USSR. But it's a bit tricky, okay? You cannot just tell the Americans to fuck off, because then the Bolsheviks would, completely run you over. It's a trick that you need to do. You need to get strong enough.
This isn't like a Bircher thing, leaving the UN.
Oh, in that way.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean,
do they think that maybe those the Birchers are okay then?
He probably thinks that, but they're not right-wing enough for him for sure.
Oh yeah, but, absolutely.
That was a common problem with Birchers, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's the usual story.
Yeah.
So you need to as United Europe, you need to get strong enough to become an actual empire and a world power, and then tell the Americans to fuck off, so that you are able to resist USSR on your own. So this is, I think, the rationale why he worked with groups that worked with the CIA, including the guy who wrote the foreword for this book. Okay, we don't like them. It's bad. Although he says the modern capitalism is as bad as Marxism, but I guess not really, because they chose to cooperate with them until they get strong enough so they can tell everyone to fuck off.
Right.
Is the idea here. So he says among, various fascists who, he doesn't say fascists, but that's what he means, who have these ideas of united Europe, they confuse some terminology there. They confuse the term of European Empire and the nation of Europe. And he mentions there Yoki as an example of that. Although he has a good idea about an European empire, but it's a bit uncertain when he sometimes defines it as a nation and so on. So he's completely against this idea of European nation because it's an identity as a European should be of a much higher order than a national identity. It should be, about, again, a European idea, an Aryan ideal, or something like that. And there would be nations in a united Europe, but what we don't need, he says, is nationalism and chauvinism. So it should be an European empire, not a European nation. A good model is the medieval world, when you had unity, but also some kind of a diversity.
Do you mean when it was led by the Pope?
No, by his enemy, the Holy Roman Emperor, is what he likes. Actually, you usually he refers to the First Reich, the Holy Roman Empire. Here he mentions explicitly the Second Reich, the way the Bismarck made the German Empire work. He thinks this should be a good model for a united Europe. So you have states which have their own autonomies, but then you have a unifying factor in the empire. And these states, as particular parts, should be organized in a hierarchical way. And this hierarchy should, then be the whole of Europe, which parts would have autonomy, but they would be able to function in synergy and have common action and whatever, defend each other and so on.
Interesting.
I'd love to see him play a paradox strategy game with this philosophy.
So there should be a kind of a twofold integration. The parts should be integrated themselves into themselves. Like the state should be stable, which means that they should not be democracies, he says. And then, they should be integrated into a wider European empire. There should be, now this is a problem. He doesn't really give an answer. There should be like a spiritual center, a unity for the European empire. But it cannot be Catholicism, because it sucks. It cannot be Christianity in general, because that's even worse. And he says something very racist, like even the American blacks are Christians, or something like that. As an example why, it cannot be Christianity. It cannot be European culture, because that's the way that people use that phrase. It usually means everything that he dislikes,
Right.
All the modern things, meaning since the Renaissance.
Right.
Until
music,
now.
dancing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So not, the Grail and King Arthur and such things.
Important shit like that.
Yeah. Yes.
Important and totally real shit like that.
So this is a problem. Like, what should be this spiritual center of united Europe? He's not completely sure what it should be, but there should be a limit to what from the modern society is accepted in Europe. Kind of like he thinks, like pre-Second World War Japan. Europe should be like that, he thinks.
Interesting.
Also, we should overcome the false dilemma of fascism versus anti-fascism. We should really overcome this.
Of course,
Finally, thank you.
And the way you should overcome it is you should completely, without any compromise, reject any anti-fascism. And then
makes sense.
You should also realize that not everything in fascism was great. This is
okay.
Yeah. That's very measured, very balanced response there.
Yes. So you should realize that fascisms and Nazism as well were consisted of various contradictory elements, and that there was a good core to it, which was the conservative revolution, but the war prevented from this from further developing. Okay, so it's not really useful. Fascism as such, only certain elements. He does like the Waffen-SS, though. He's very nostalgic about that.
Oh, you don't say.
He says, at least before 1945, we had a real, European united military of volunteers that went to fight against communism.
Oh, these are guys who cared about things. They're very special. Yeah.
And they were from all Europe, Belgians. And
that there were some Muslim guys. I mean, come on. Can you believe it?
Yes. So, okay, we come to the very end. This is where the thing that I mentioned in the beginning. Now he talks about the idea of the order. Okay, it seems that this is in the end the answer. It's a pretty weak answer. You need to form a new order. Okay, a new Mannerbund. Okay, to reconstitute the center of the future empire and the state again.
Yeah, I saw that movie.
It should come from elites, and they should occupy key positions in their nations. So it's kind of a conspiracy, it sounds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There should be secret elites that should, go to key positions in their nations, and they should be recruited from two kinds of people. The first one, which would be less numerous, are members of ancient European families.
Okay.
The ones who are into this and are
Very
also,
important. Yeah.
Aristocrats. That's one. The other one, much more numerous number of recruits should come from a warrior type, he says. And he literally means like Marines, paratroopers, and so on. He thinks that these people, which is interesting because this is now the era of Gladio that we're talking about.
Right.
I mean, he's directly talking to some of these people.
Yeah.
Right.
Because this type of people are able, because they have the right psychology and character, so they can see through modern ideologies. They have an intolerance for the rhetoric and indifference toward intellectualism. So they have this ability for impersonal activity. They are precise and resolute and committed. That's what they need. So, a European idea should be developed from these two types of people. They should come together. There should also be a leader, one leader who should be the center of this order. But he says there is no such person in existence at the moment.
Man, but, we really should have started with Evola because we did it backwards completely. This has taken us all the way back to our first 3 episodes, really. This is some Vindex shit.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Right.
This is Serpent Swalk almost with M.A.R. Barker we just went over. I mean, this is everywhere in this podcast, Evola, and it's amazing to actually hear it from the horse's mouth, from the ass's mouth, I guess.
Yes.
And really how fucking terrible it is. And
yes, this is direct ass to mouth.
How am I still fucking surprised on this show when a fascist intellectual is surprisingly stupid? Like, why am I still shocked by this? I don't...
Well, because sometimes you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. You want to think, okay, Evola at least is they're...
Yeah, somebody, right? It's been around for so long.
Heavyweights.
Yeah.
And then you read it and it's... No.
It's not. It's real. It's just... it's nonsensical. And, damn.
Yeah, it's stupid, yeah. I mean, okay, you can say that he kind of dumbed it down for the audience that he had. He was trying to,
that's it.
But no,
yeah, it's not so much the language.
It's not much of an excuse here. It's
no, it's not. Especially since this is one of the 3 books that have the essence there.
Right,
the quintessential Evola.
And I bet it's true. This is the essence. But
yeah, I think it is.
It's a stupid essence.
Ah, man. And it just keeps on giving,
Yeah. And there is a third part.
I was about to say, wait, there's more, right?
There is Ride the Tiger, the most influential one.
Oh, God damn it. Okay.
I mean, we have to do it. But it's going to be the same, isn't it?
Well, I think it's less optimistic than this.
So,
okay. Getting more into siege.
Is this more like of a lull here in the like general Evola timeline? Like
50s, though. I mean, you'd think he'd be like living it up in CIA.
This is more close to the end of the war, but Ride the Tiger had an influence later on, I think, for younger generation of terrorists, like in the late 60s, 70s, who are more black-pilled, I would let's say, about any of the possibility that he discusses here. It was like clearly not going to happen. So
it was pretty fucking weak. I mean, like you said, even if I was like a young fascist looking for answers, I'd be pretty depressed after reading this one.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
So all I have to do is make Europe an empire. Thank you. Great. I'll get on that. I'll get started right away.
And
Wonderful.
Find a leader that doesn't exist now.
Yes, perfect.
Be from an aristocratic family. It's not Otto von Habsburg. He's a fucking Democrat. I bet he would love Otto von Habsburg would like these things, but...
Otto, he was into intermarium shit. And,
I mean, he was a conservative, but for Evola, he was a Democrat.
Is Gunter fucking add up for some sort of
I don't know. I don't know what his deal is.
He's some sort of aristocracy, I think.
The Gunther,
you guys know which Gunther I'm talking about, the one that
now I realize. Yeah. The crazy guy on Twitter, yeah.
Yeah.
The German unification is today seen negatively, but that's a very negative perception. What is in truth, this German unification has led to this long period of peace and prosperity, which we call the Golden Age, yeah?
He's some sort of Austrian aristocracy.
Oh, of course.
Which might be exactly what is...
Yeah. Chap House people made a claim that he's a reincarnation of Hitler, I think.
All right.
I've heard that he's just some bourgeois Austrian guy that, they let, toy around with things because he's just some rich guy.
Yeah, he's like a NATO enthusiast, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's very much for democracy,
Well, I mean, I'm sure he could be swayed otherwise if,
yes.
he was told that he was some sort of, part of this bigger thing.
If you offer him the job of a god king, maybe,
Yeah. Can you imagine if Gunther was our god king? It's like me.
I mean, it wouldn't be good for us coming from the Balkans. He doesn't like Balkan people, no?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be fucked up.
My name's Fritz. I'm fine. Y'all are a lot more fucked than I am when the God Emperor Gunther comes around.
God damn it, Fritz.
I think I'll be safe. Well, until that day, guys, until we're riding the tiger together.
Riding the tiger.
I wish there was some interesting, super insightful thing to say after this, but this book is it's bad. It doesn't make sense. It seems like it was thrown together as an afterthought. I can't understand at all why it's necessary reading for anybody. Even if you are a fascist, what answers are you getting out of this?
But this is what they were reading, and he was they call him, they always say that they quote themselves from that time saying, Evola is our Marcuse, but better.
Wow.
So this is the better Marcuse of fascism.
Is that the highest bar you could think of? Is Marcuse? No, it's okay. It's all right.
Well,
you know what?
Maybe at this time. I mean,
maybe at this time.
Know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but Marcuse is for Evola, he's a fucking, I don't know, a god. He's a god for Evola, no?
Yeah.
I mean, most people are, I think. I know fucking drunk dudes from the fucking street that are gods for fucking Evola. Yeah. I mean, this is bad.
It's bad, yeah.
Well, all right. All right, guys. That's it. That's our conclusion.
That's it. That's our conclusion. This is our joyful return to free episodes.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see how long that lasts. All right. If you really want the good stuff, Patreon. We're always putting those out. Almost never fail over there. Yeah. Almost never fail.
But we will be returning to some sort of normalcy at some point.
Yeah, just like Evola always wanted us to. A return to normalcy. We have learned something today, Boris. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, well, after we launch our own conservative revolution, we'll see you hopefully next week.
Yep.
All right, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye. Gibbelism. Hey there, Fritz here from The Empire Never Ended. This has been one of our weekly free episodes for free people. But for premium people, we also have weekly premium episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/tenepod, TENEPOD, and also follow our various social media things in the show description there. Like and subscribe them. Follow them. Like and follow and subscribe. Follow them. Do it.